Hello and welcome, lovely audience. I hope you guys are doing super well. Thanks for joining me here once again. I'm accompanied by Mr. Bret Cohen, who has also appeared on this channel before. Bret, thanks so much for joining me. Bret's also a fellow Fruitarian, follows the healthy lifestyle, spirituality, health, and wellness. I'll put a link to his Facebook group and channel and whatnot below in the description, so you guys can check him out as well. But yeah, it's great to have you here with me, and it's during such a crazy time. You know, this ridiculous lockdown situation with the coronavirus fear spreading like wildfire throughout the population, and you know, people are locked up at home, or at least they believe they need to be locked up at home. And all these questions about immunity, and you know, so it's a good time for us to be getting together just to, you know, chat about a couple of these things. And I was telling you earlier that maybe something, I know you had a lot of topics that you had an interest in sharing and discussing with me that I love. And you know, one of the things I think that's important, especially now during the summer, we've got, you know, the sun's starting to creep out and bless us with the warmth, and we're still quote unquote locked down in this quarantine situation. And I think something that's important for people to know, to understand about immunity and health and whatnot, is how vital it is to get outside, you know, get some fresh air, get some sun, and these two wonderful healing remedies, you know, fresh air and sun, in spite of tyrannical pressures we have to stay inside. Right? Anything that you have to say about that, something that you wanted to share, just about, you know, getting good air, being outside in general, getting some sunlight, all that kind of stuff.
First, I want to tell you that you're getting scruffy, and it looks good.
Thank you, I appreciate it. As always, your beard and scruff looks fantastic.
Thank you.
Wow.
So on the topic of being outdoors, right now we're being told by various, in certain ways, powerful entities on the planet that we should be staying indoors as much as possible. And there's good reason to spend more time outdoors, basically. Where do I even begin with that? I think most of us have an intuitive knowledge of this, if not everyone. How often have you been indoors and feeling kind of down, maybe lethargic even, or worse, and then you go outside and you instantly feel better. You instantly feel oftentimes a lot better. Especially if you live in somewhere where you can go, like somewhere outside of the city where you can go and be in nature and have a relatively fresh air. And so there's reasons for that. There's a lot of reasons for that. Main reasons is the breath. It's breathe the breath of life. It is an extremely important function of the body. We bring in air from outside of ourselves, goes into the lungs, nourishes us. And exhale. And we exhale the waste products of our body, carbon dioxide and so on. And that's quite a lot of volume, actually, with one breath.
We forget how critically essential breath is, and I don't think I need to expand on that. I'm sure everyone innately understands how important that is. Every time you breathe, you're engaged in a process of, you know, constructing the very blood that runs through your body. Air quality becomes quite essential, because if you're breathing in bad air, you're going to be making bad blood. And of course, food and water has to do with that. But, you know, especially in a time like this where we're concerned about immunity, probably a good idea to be getting fresh air and like you said, drawing on that innate intelligence that we have that understands that being in nature and being close to nature is health promoting, to say the least.
So we exhale waste products.
Yes.
And we are breathing that into the air that is nearby. When we're outside, it blows away. It goes off into the universe where it continues to travel forever. When we're indoors, not so much. It accumulates. Yeah. It's better if we can open the window, open the windows a lot. That helps. A lot of people, unfortunately, are not even doing that so much. But we're indoors, and we're exhaling the air, and this waste is accumulating, and we're getting a more and more toxic environment that we are existing in. Right. Indoors. Breathe it in again. Breathe in the waste.
You know, it's very similar to the situation we see with food. I mean, we have a mechanism to eliminate the waste products associated with the bulk of material coming into our mouths, right? And unless there's a way to release that, you build up toxicity, right? The metabolic byproducts of digestion, right? And so if you're in the same room and you have no outlet, if the air can't expand and get out of there, then you're gonna be collecting and accumulating respiratory waste products. I have a question for you. Let's say you're someone in your house or whatever, and all the windows are closed. Would opening up a couple of windows be sufficient? Or, you know, to at least not be accumulating waste products back in the body? Or would you need to do something a bit more drastic than just opening windows? When I say drastic, you know what I mean? Just having breaks where you go outside, or putting more plants in the room. Is opening windows at least the bare minimum that people should be doing?
Good question, Eli. Thank you. In my view, you know, you're asking me if a person is living indoors, as many of us are, if it's sufficient to open some windows, if that's enough. My view, no, it's actually not enough, but it is much better than not opening the windows.
Gotcha.
I personally, I think the good life, ideally, is to be outdoors all the time, 24/7, 365. I'm not doing that at the moment. But I'm interested in it. It's because of the way society is, it's a very challenging kind of idea to have in the mind.
Right, yeah.
Maybe I can read this short segment, actually, which is about what we're talking about.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
This is a chapter from the Hilton Hotima book, Man's Higher Consciousness. It's a great book for people that feel drawn to any of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I can definitely vouch for the book. It's fantastic. It'll open your minds to new avenues and, you know, areas that you might not have explored otherwise. So if you can find a copy of the book, please go out there and purchase it. Yeah, because you won't regret it. It's a good book.
There's a link to this book as well on the Facebook group Fruitarianism and Dry Fasting. If anyone who's on Facebook wants to go there, and there's like a pinned post that has a couple different books.
Excellent.
Link.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I'll post the link in the description so you guys can go and check that out at your leisure.
2 paragraphs. It's called The Home. Put up a roof, and you have obstructed 3 of the natural ozone-creating forces. Add the walls, you entrap the fumes flowing in from without, and those generated within by man and his work. The hermit's hut in the hills would soon be filled with polluted air, unless doors and windows are kept open all the time. Filth that destroys health and shortens life is constantly generated and eliminated by the body itself. Your bed should be left open all day to dissipate the filth generated and eliminated by the body during the night. The sun's purifying rays should shine in the bed several hours each day, and pure air should fan it for hours before it is made up. It is much better, of course, to hang the bedding on a line in the air and sunshine. The ordinary bed is not fit to sleep in. The material of which made, including feathers in the pillows, go through a steady process of decay. and constantly emit foul, musty odors that are injurious to health, but not noticed because one gets used to them. Furthermore, the polluted air of civilization has ruined the sense of smell in most people. Insomnia can often be traced to foul air in the bedroom, some of which comes from the bed itself. That is the language of the body's intelligence as it tries to tell you to move into better air. But you believe in taking sleeping tablets and thus force your body to endure a condition that is slowly destroying it. Those with weak lungs do fairly well in the good air during the day, but have trouble and cough after they have been in bed long enough for the foul fumes of the room, bed and bedding, to fill their lungs. Some have serious coughing spells during the night and find it hard to breathe, all due to the damage done their organ by the foul fumes of their bed, bedding, and bedroom. This philosophy is too new to impress many, but one will soon be convinced of it, convinced if it is given a trial. Just as sure as you live and sleep in the fresh outside air, you will see health improvements.
What it makes me think of is there's, the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. The universe is self-similar across all scales. And much like you can talk about air quality and circulation and elimination and appropriation of good air and the elimination of wasteful air, what's the number one kind of similar common denominator in all sorts of disease conditions, right? And irregularities in the body. It's like this stagnation of flow, of proper flow of either the blood or the tissue or the lymph. Not necessarily the tissue, but at least, the lymph channels. Good flow. So clean flow, unobstructed flow, through your tubes, through all of your channels in the body. And without that flow, if there is any stagnation of any sort, what happens is there's an accumulation, and then whatever local accumulation, let's say your neck or acne or whatever, right? Kidney stones, name it, just name it. This is all just accumulation of material brought on by lack of proper flow. So you can see the very same things in what Hotema is talking about, right? He's saying, make sure that there's proper circulation, not only in your body, but in the room that you're in, right?
Very well said, my friend. Yeah, human beings are not rocks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Faster circulation, a lot of to maintain harmony and the proper balance of all of the materials that we're using in our vehicle, our bodies. We need proper circulation of the blood, of the air, of everything else. Not too much, not too little. The best definition that I am aware of for something that is toxic, it's not any specific material that is actually a toxin. It's simply the amount of it. Our bodies are constantly working to keep the proper balance. Right amount of oxygen, the right amount of carbon dioxide, the right amount, everything else. Not too much, not too little.
Right. So if you are at home and you're trapped indoors, you go out, right? Okay, so you're getting some sun, getting some air, which obviously we recommend, in the house for when they are in the house. So what can we say might be beneficial? Opening up the windows, right? Are there any particular plants that you've come across that are better at circulating CO2 for oxygen? Are there plants that would serve a better function in the house rather than others, or ones that and if not plants, then are there any other strategies to help circulate the air?
I'm not sure which plants. Maybe some plants are more efficient than others at purifying the air, but I think plants in general, having a lot of plants in the house is definitely a good idea. And fans are definitely great. I think the best thing that a person might do is to not right on your body when you're sleeping, because that can dry out the skin and be uncomfortable for people, but like maybe right or right nearby to help move the air around some. Especially think about air stagnating inside just from being inside for a while. But when we're sleeping, we're in one spot. We're not moving around much. Some people move around more than others, but you're really accumulating this cloud of waste around yourself when sleeping for hours. Mm-hmm. So a fan helps a lot with that. And, and exhaust fans and intake fans in the window are really good. Nice, to have typically one fan in one window on one side of the room or house, and another fan, one's taking air out and the other fan on the other side bringing air in.
Right.
And if you only one of those fans, then the exhaust fan is more important, mm-hmm. I think. All I can really do is just suggest to people that I think it's very significant information, and it definitely runs contrary to a lot of the common ways of life that human society is involved with right now. Mm-hmm. So just to, as with a lot of the wonderful information that you share with people, Eli, right. You don't necessarily just absorb it and then you're done. Often what will happen is a person will absorb the information, and then there's a whole process. Right. Days, months, years of putting that information into our thinking, into our lives. It's an ongoing process. Yeah.
It's important that we take in information, but I find a lot of the time is that, people have the information, but it's a different step, going to either understanding it or actually taking the steps to implement it, right? So yeah, of course, I definitely agree with that. Now, because everything's shut down, it's giving people that much more ease to abuse their bodies with bad food, technological corporate food, right? And so how do we get the idea across to people that their health is their responsibility? You know what I mean? And the high speed, fast, quick foods, the processed foods, there's a tendency to drift towards that, especially now. But I think it's even more important now that we really, really focus on, what is it exactly that gives health and true immunity, right? And what are the conditions that need to be satisfied in order to achieve that? And so, we need to be looking at things like, seriously, as simple as it is, like we were just talking about, getting outside, getting sunlight, not being scared of the sun, don't slather yourself in sunblock. My goodness, how much sunblock, like that is just crazy. Good foods, eat wholesome foods, just simple fruits, simple vegetables. But I find that it's a strange dichotomy between a climate of fear that everyone's been subjected to, and they're worrying about their immunity. They're taking these precautions, excessive hand washing, social distancing, all this stuff. So immunity is on their mind, but then they're just eating the same garbage that they've always eaten. So, right. What's happening there? Are they just not able to be honest with themselves? Is it just a lack of strength to be able to recognize it's strange. You know what I mean? It's confusing.
Yeah.
I mean? Yeah, it's strange.
You brought up a couple different important topics there.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I think that we can only do, Eli, I think, and anyone else that we're connecting with here that I'm not seeing,
yeah.
We can only do the best we can, first of all, with anything, really, and definitely with this. All we can do in life is our best. As long as a person does their best, at least I get some solace out of reminding myself from time to time that that's all you can do. It's almost more important sometimes to do your best in a sense than it is whether or not you actually succeeded with your goals, because the goal may or may not have been under our control, but doing your best on a personal level is 100% under individuals' control.
Right.
my other thoughts in response to what you just said. What we're up against in attempting to spread the message of taking personal responsibility for real health, for truly getting health, that is a very, very large mission. That is, to truly accomplish that would completely change the world. And there are large, powerful entities that, from their perspective, they wouldn't want that to happen, because they would lose their power. They would ultimately also be in a better position than they are now by far, such as what people call the elites of the world and the 1% and so on. But they would temporarily have to go through a lot of difficult times. They would lose their position as well, I'll just say, let's just be real, as slave owners. You know, because you can't sell people things that are healthy very easily. You can't. I think people need a lot, or they think they need a lot, and healthy people don't need much. The healthier we become, the less we actually tend to need. So it's a big mission, and a very important. And I highly respect you, Eli, and other people that are doing this work. Thank you. Really.
No, thank you. And I've mentioned it in some other videos. I'm sure I've mentioned it in some other videos. Maybe just touching on the topic here and there about not needing. Actually, no, I did make a video about this. Just not needing, and the ability, the power of not needing. And just like you said, when you can relinquish your dependence on things, or on a thing, you gain power over that thing. And the more dependencies that you can overcome, that you can conquer, you gain more and more and more power over those things. And one of the things that Hotema talks about in his books is that very same phenomena, right? Where he challenges the nutritional paradigm, where the academic and health community is obsessed with the idea that the bulk of nutrition that is put into the body that is going to give you health because of this, atom, this molecule, and this particular, and all of these things are necessary because they do all of these things. They're just stratified throughout the body, ramified into they do all these things. And Hotema, documents, he must document tons of cases in that book where that theory just doesn't apply. It can't be the reason attributed to the people that he documents and their absurd longevity. So it's something else, and it comes with these people having conquered, at least to a certain degree, the dependence on the sheer bulk and stimulation of food, and relying on higher energy sources like the air that you're breathing. Like we were saying, air is the primary means of sustained vitality. Primary means of sustained vitality. And if you can harness that ability, you might find less dependence on the other lesser forms of sustenance. But developing that power is not easy. There are a lot of stumbling blocks in our way in seeking that, right? In attempting to go after that type of health. In answering, I guess, my own question, right? What is, how do we overcome this? It's like, can we really blame people? Because, there's a crushing institution around us that is hoping that we never get to that type of realization, or at least even know that exists. Because we can't do anything if we don't even know that whole realm exists. Well, you're not going to strive for it, right? Yeah,
agreed. I'm sorry. Were you? Was there more?
Oh yeah, no. No, I'm just saying that what I was originally asking was, we see all of these people. It's like there's this divide in the mind where the instinctual drive is obviously preservation of the self. So we know that they want immunity from disease and sickness and illness, and they're doing these external things while not paying attention to the more important things, like what goes in the body, being outside, being away. So it's just trying to reconcile this thing in people where they're willing to do the little thing, but the major thing they're not willing to really look at, and they're still having the TV dinners and the pizzas and the ice creams and all this stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah, those are very powerful words. Yeah. So if we're trying to actually free people, break them out of the matrix, you might say, break them out of the chains of ways of thinking that are holding us all back, really, because it's an ongoing process. I'm not claiming to be beyond it all by any means. Yeah, I think it's a matter of being as skillful as we can. There's a lot of people in the world right now that they're used to eating meat, for example, and they're used to eating maybe some processed food, and simultaneously their life is very, very full and difficult, and they've felt offended at least once by someone coming at them. Someone comes around and identifies as something like vegan and says, you need to stop eat because what you're doing is terrible to the animals, and they're like, oh, who is this person talking to me in this way? Like, how dare they? And they're very offended. And then, they develop this wall towards anything that reminds them of that kind of exchange.
I see. Yeah.
Kind of thing I think is very common actually in the world at the moment. There's a huge population of people identifying as quote unquote vegan, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that. I think this is one of the issues that comes up there around this stuff. Yeah. So basically, we have to be as skillful as possible. We have to be really, really extra skillful, because pointing a finger at them, telling them anything, it's going to remind them of this fence that they think they have against vegan people. Yeah. There are a lot of people that are genuinely behaving, that identify as vegan, that are genuinely behaving in this kind of unskilled way. And I was one of them for a little while. Mm-hmm. I'm really a good friend of mine helps me to snap out of that and start to process some of this information here. Right. Let's say you meet someone, Eli, at your job, and you're doing your stunt work for a movie, and you decide to have lunch together or go for a walk. And after maybe reflecting on some of this information that I'm bringing up, thinking, well, how can I most skillfully go about this exchange? Because I really want to help this person if I can. I don't just want to be right. There's no point in I'm right, but I'm going to offend this person to the point where they're going to go off and do these things to harm themselves even more than they probably would have, and to harm, animals and so on. Yeah. Plants. How can I most skillfully go about that? Mm-hmm. I'm very much still working with this information, but I can tell you some of what I've figured out so far is often it's better to not even bring up any of that stuff right away. Just try to connect with the person first. Right. Often that's just what a lot of it's just thinking like, well, how can I help this person in any way, shape, or form? How can I help this person? If a person is overwhelmed with stuff, physical responsibility and mental clutter, as so many people are these days, one example is often one of the best things we can do for someone is simply to listen, to make a bit of small talk, and then once they feel comfortable enough to start to share about whatever it is they have to say, completely remove our behaviors of agreement and disagreement and judgment and so on. Mm-hmm. Our entire practice, actually, this is another thing I thought we might talk about today. Mm-hmm. We can them compassionate listening. where we simply serve them by listening. We listen to this person and we allow them to unload a bit. Some of the accumulation of stuff that they have inside of themselves. And we resist the urge to start to, even if they're talking about whatever they're talking about, no matter how much we agree or disagree with it, it's not about that. We're simply allowing them to unload some so that they can feel some relief.
It's interesting because even throughout history, a lot of the spiritual teachers or any of the adepts who have gained any sort of mastery in understanding of natural principles and natural law, whenever they reach out to their community of devotees or small clique of prescribers to that ideology, whatever that person is promulgating, they always relate to them in the manner that is most apprehensible to them, right? They don't necessarily just dump on them the whole truth because, like you said, is that effective, right? If they're not receptive to that, then it's useless. Then the teaching is useless. So what a person might need, or maybe even like a group of people who are kind of married to a particular culture, right? Yeah, you might need to tailor the teaching that you're giving in a different way that you would tailor that teaching to a different group who's got some other ideology or some sort of cultural construction. Because if you want to be as effective as possible, you've got to relate to people in the manner in which they're going to be most receptive to. When people like yourself and myself, we hear the information, it's like, yeah, obviously, right? Yeah, of course. How could anyone not agree with that, right? What is wrong with you if you don't understand, something as brain dead simple as don't kill if you don't need to? Seems like the most elementary common sense, right? But there are people that don't operate on that wavelength yet, and so you might need to tailor your approach. So let's say that person, I don't know, there could be any number of scenarios, but that person is more receptive to, let's just say, family illness and disease. Their grandmother or mother was stricken by colitis or something. Maybe the best way to relate to that person isn't, well, if you spend your money supporting a murder institution, you're not really a great person. They might hear that and say, F you, I'm going to do whatever I want. But then you relate to them at the level of like, well, turning your body into a graveyard, into a tomb, actually causes things like colitis. And so you can eliminate that by showing this to your family and yourself, you can eliminate things like that. And maybe that resonates with them.
Yeah, for a lot of people, I find it can be helpful to practice bringing that information in a non-personal way. Yeah. Rather than saying, like, I'm talking to you and I'm saying, Eli, if you do this, then this will be good. And if you do this, then you're gonna mess yourself up. Like, might instead tell a story about which provides the same information. But I tell a story about someone, like one of my old music teachers. He was really good at this. He would rarely put a lesson like aimed at me directly. He would tell stories. He would be like, well, I have so much respect for this guy here because he plays what he feels. Yeah. He feels something from inside and he plays that. And he really can express his feelings that way. Mm-hmm. If he had said to me, Bret, you need to bring your feelings out in this music more. I'm not hearing enough feelings like out of this music. It sounds mechanical, like it's boring. Then that's not nearly as digestible for a lot of people. You see what I'm getting at? Yeah. So I think that's one of the main skills. There's so many, but that's one of the main skills that I'm working with. Mm-hmm. Someone recommended to me to look into the life of Ernest Hemingway recently, and I decided to follow up on that because I remember there's a woman that I used to date a while ago who was actually related to Ernest Hemingway.
Oh, come on.
He had told me the family didn't really like him and he was kind of an asshole. And, I had been curious to look into that a little bit since then, but never did. So I finally did. Anyway, someone, how that ties into what we're talking about here, just concise speech. Yeah. He learned from one of his writing teachers, find the essence of what you're trying to say and then say it loudly. Everything, all the fluff and then say it loudly. Yeah. In Stoic practice of Stoicism, they just talk about concise speech, practicing concise speech. Many people have said this sort of thing. I think that's also really good because, again, it's really useful anyway. It's not some sort of ultimate thing that always needs to happen. But in terms of bringing effectively bringing and a message that we think is important, that can help people to people, and they're actually going to receive it. I think it's good for that. Definitely.
Yeah. I noticed that over time, where collecting and accumulating a lot of this information, a lot of this knowledge, right? That some of the stuff that we're talking about, and then over time, just with practice, when people, because as well as I do, you dare to venture on this type of lifestyle, you're going to get inundated by questions, right? All the time, nonstop questions. Perfect, right? People are curious and people are inquisitive, and you put yourself in a place of responsibility to be able to address questions, right? And I noticed, over time that, just trying to be as concise as possible, because I tend to just drift into a lot of ideas, and sometimes that's great, but there's a place for that. When you're dealing with people directly, I think it's important to just be as laser focused as possible and just address the best, most compelling statements or truths that you can present. And then whether the person is on board with that or not, if there is like good wholesome truth in your concise statement, right, then they have no choice but to like consider it and think about it. And I've noticed that lots of times, just giving, a very, very short but quite compelling answer. And you can see it. You can see people register it and you're like, holy crap. I've heard many times, people say directly, I've never thought of it like that. And it's like, and that's really interesting. Like that I guess that's right. And so you get the wheels, get the wheels turning. Sorry, I'm yep. I don't even realize I'm holding like this practice weapon as I'm talking to you, waving a knife around. So I'm going to put that down. So, but I recognize that, and I noticed that, the more we can do that in our discussions with people, the better off we are. Distributing blame or whatever, just being really concise about your statements.
And in combination with that skill, I find it can be really good also. And of course, these are ongoing practices in and of themselves. Yeah. We each can continually become more advanced with them or more sensitive with them. But in combination with the concise speech, mm-hmm. there's also this nice concept, developing a sense of exactly like how much a person is ready for. A plant doesn't just pop out of its seed and instantly become a tree. It grows a little gradually. If it tried to do that, that wouldn't be good.
Yeah. Yeah. Jamming growth hormones into chickens to make them grow 20 times faster. It's like, well, yeah, you get more yield, but I mean, is that really what you want health-wise? Ignoring the fact that eating chickens is a destructive habit to begin with. Yeah, understandably, but you make it worse and compound that by accelerating growth and development, artificially.
If someone said like, "Oh, this seed should grow into a tree instantly," that would just be ridiculous. but we tend to sort of expect things similar to that of ourselves and of other people sometimes.
Right.
So we can become more and more skillful with figuring out exactly how much or how little a person is really ready for, and what would be good for them in terms of what we're presenting them in terms of information or anything. Sometimes just the tiniest little suggestion. Yeah, I said to my mother one time, I said, I basically explained what I at the moment was believing was the law of karma. I said, well, everything you do comes back to you equally. And I was applying that to aspects of life where it's not necessarily true, I realized later. And all she said to me, she didn't say, I disagree, or she said, do you really believe that? And then she dropped it and went on to something else. That was enough.
Yeah.
Just a little something to get me to maybe question what I was saying, what my part of myself.
Yeah.
So there's that. Anyway, speaking of concise speech, I mean, we could go on about this stuff. There's one other important topic we had on the agenda today about the ethical fruitarianism. Should we go save it for another time?
It says that we've been recording for an hour and 6 minutes.
Yeah, that's about right. Mm-hmm.
Holy smokes. That sounds like a good topic that we could dedicate an entire talk to. Just ethical fruitarianism. Sure. And why that would be, the best moral choice for all the reasons that I know we have that we could share. So maybe that we could do like on its own in an isolated way, because that's a pretty heavy topic, right? As for everything that we kind of covered today, I think one of the really fundamental ideas that we could give to the audience, whoever's watching, and everything we've talked about today is, we talked about treating your body correctly and properly and with love, not trapping yourself indoors and believing, the fear, and get outside, breathe good air, go for some walks, be with nature. And of course, what we need to do is be really strict with engendering more responsibility. I think as responsibility goes up for yourself, your health irrevocably improves. And it's funny what you were saying earlier about just about relating to people and all that stuff. That responsibility, because we want to accelerate growth. Like you said, you can't just take the seed and make it grow into the tree, at least without adverse consequences. You can try, you can do like an artificial scientific approach, right? And you can try to violate the laws of nature, and you might be able to produce a tree faster, but it won't be the best tree possible. Like it'll be a far cry from that. Just like, the artificial chicken or the artificial fish. These aren't going to be the most effective means possible to producing life. And I think what we're doing is, again, we're trying to find ways to bypass responsibility. So what are we doing? We want vaccines. We want magic herbs, to be able to just cure us of our ills instantly. We want like the quick fix, whether it's a natural approach, whether it's an herb or whatnot, or whether it's an artificial synthetic concoction like a vaccine. We want the quick fix. We want the oak tree without the development, right? And it's really important for people to recognize, if you want the oak tree, you better start at the beginning. You have to start somewhere. True health and true immunity, it's not the magic pill. You have to have patience with it. And man, there's no better time to start than now, when things are crappy and, you might have a bit more time on your hands. Well, hit the books, do some researching maybe, and develop and cultivate responsibility to yourself.
One of the premises of one of my favorite books for 20-something years now, Science of Breath by Yogi Rama Sharaka. He makes this point very strongly by asking these three questions. How long can a person live without eating?
Yeah.
How long can a person live without drinking? How long can a person live without breathing? That kind of puts it in perspective, I think, pretty strongly.
Yeah. It's kind of like a natural, just a very intuitive hierarchy of nutritional needs that you don't need any scientists to, confirm to you. It's very obvious when you think about it, right?
There may be even higher levels, I think, to be attained than that, but that's not generally. Yeah, there's cars that just run on electricity. Yeah. The other list of three questions when examining a choice in life, a possible action versus another possible action. A nice way to examine three questions: is it true? Is it helpful? Is it kind? Isn't that nice?
Yeah, it's beautiful. So simple. And is it really a coincidence that the most beautiful things are generally the simplest? If I'm not mistaken, I think that's like one of the very first things that I mentioned, very first ideas that I tried to convey to my audience when I started this channel. Like, video number 1 was simplicity. What is more beautiful than a perfect circle, perfect sphere, a raindrop, just a perfect circle, right? The atom, like spinning, is super simple. And I think that sayings like this that exemplify the simplicity of nature, right? They resonate with us because they're true. They don't cause harm, and they're simple, right? Whatever sphere, whether it's action, whether it's emotion, whether it's thinking, whether it's the words we use to communicate, these like core tenets, simplicity, truthfulness, cohesiveness, harmony. And wherever you apply them, you always get this really, really, really beneficial fruit. I guess what we'll do is, I'm really happy that you were able to come and just share all these ideas with me. It's nice to just catch up and talk about important things. It's always great to do. Yeah. So Bret, thank you so much. Really appreciate you coming out with me.
The feeling, Eli. Yeah. I hope that one day we might be able to hang out in person as well.
Yeah. One day. Yeah. Once all this craziness dies down. It'd be really nice to to see you in person one day. So, and I'm sure that'll happen. I'm sure we can make that happen.
In the meantime, it's definitely a blessing to have these technologies to be able to even see each other.
Yeah.
With the and all that.
I know. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. Yeah, it's an amazing thing. But yeah, for sure. We'll catch up again as I'm positive we will. And for everyone who's tuned in, thank you very much for joining us here. And if you haven't subscribed, then make sure to subscribe if you find these videos helpful to you. But for now, we'll call that quits, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a good day, guys.